Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Hall of Ma'at, and it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you this morning our presenter, our speaker, who's taken time out to come and visit with us, and that's Dr. Joel Wallach. And without any further ado, let me go ahead and just read his biographical information. Born and raised in Missouri. See, I said it just like I was from Missouri, right? From Missouri, Dr. Joel Wallach attended the University of Missouri, where he received his bachelor's degree in science of agriculture. A veterinarian for 30 years, he worked as a research veterinary pathologist with the National Institute of Health for the Center of the Biology of Natural Systems, Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, Yerkes Regional Primate Research Center in Atlanta, Georgia, at Emory University. And having discovered and identified the first animal models for cystic fibrosis, monkeys, he found that he could reproduce their condition at will because it was a nutritional deficiency. His find offered great promise for children with the disease, but when he made it public, the Institute fired him on a 24-hour notice. Chagrined and perplexed, Dr. Wallach made the decision to go to medical school so he could treat children for cystic fibrosis himself. Realizing that traditional medical school was likely to be as repressive as the National Institute, he accepted an invitation to teach nutrition at the National College of Naturopathic Medicine in Oregon, not even knowing what a naturopathic doctor was. When he learned that he could be a primary care physician, that is, deliver babies, sew up chainsaw wounds, write prescriptions, and get paid by insurance, all through a program that encouraged interest in nutrition, he simultaneously enrolled as a full-time student. Soon people were flocking to the college clinic. Dr. Wallach's innovative slant is derived from his background in veterinary medicine. Because there's no health insurance, animal products such as meat and dairy are kept affordable by preventing and curing diseases with nutritional formulas in animal feed. When he started incorporating similar nutritional formulas with people, word got out that if you're not happy with your doctor, go see Dr. Wallach. He'll treat you like a dog, but you'll feel better. Dr. Wallach's credentials read in 1962, he's got his Bachelor's of Science degree, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine in 1964 at the University of Missouri, Columbia, Missouri. 1966 through 68, his postdoctoral fellowship. Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine, 1982, recipient of the 1988 Worcester Beach Gold Medal Award, 1988, 1991 Nobel Prize nominee in medicine. Of course, he has a very profound list of publications to include Rhino Express, Diseases of Exotic Animals, Let's Play Doctor, which I highly recommend every household should have, Rare Earths, Forbidden Cures, and a soon to be released, and I think it is released, I saw it in the back, Dead Doctors Don't Lie, the book. And of course, a list of audio cassettes to include Dead Doctors Don't Lie, Dead Doctors Don't Lie #2, and Dead Doctors Don't Lie video. So we'd like to invite Dr. Wallach to come up now and share his wit and wisdom with us. I give you Dr. Joel Wallach.
Take that one with you. Thank you so much, Curtis. That was a wonderful introduction. I appreciate that. And I'll do my best to live up to all of it. Appreciate you being here today. I know you could be doing other things, such a beautiful morning, but I think you'll find this is a good investment in your time. I just asked you just a couple of questions so I know who I'm talking to. How many of you have heard the tape, Dead Doctors Don't Lie? Okay, great. So I don't have to follow up any of Curtis's fine introduction. I think you get the picture, other than to say that the thing that really fascinated me in agriculture and veterinary medicine was, as Curtis pointed out, we don't have insurance. We don't have health insurance for animals. And as a result, if we were to use a human healthcare type of system for animals, it'd be sticker shock for you. Your hamburger would cost you $275 a pound just to pay for the healthcare. So we learned that we could keep the price of animal products such as meat and dairy and poultry and eggs down to where the average American could afford to eat them simply by eliminating healthcare costs. We do this in animals with nutritional formulas. And that's why we have mouse pellets and rat pellets and hamster pellets and gerbil pellets and guinea pig pellets and rabbit pellets and canned and dry dog and cat food. We have catfish pellets and ferret pellets. We have calf pellets, sheep pellets, horse pellets, pig pellets, monkey pellets, and I could go on all afternoon or all morning, but I think you get the picture. The reason why we put animal feeds into the pelletized farm is that every mouthful is perfect. Even the silliest animal in a group, even the stupidest animal in a group can't sort out and eat only the soybeans or eat only the sunflower seeds or eat only the raisins. Every mouthful is perfect. And it seemed odd to me that we would do that for animals and not people. And so I tried for many years to get doctors encouraged to use nutritional formulas to prevent and cure diseases in human beings like we did in animals, and wrote many publications and textbooks you can still find in medical school libraries. And I couldn't get doctors to do that. People who were in a position of authority either in medical research or the government didn't seem to be too interested in preventing and curing diseases in people with nutritional formulas like we did in animals. So I went back to school, became a physician, and in 1978 began to use these veterinary nutritional formulas in people. And the concept of preventing and curing diseases in animals with nutritional formulas works just like a charm in people. It works exactly the same in people. And what we're going to do here this morning is go over a lot of what my patients and I learned. If you take home just 10% of what I share with you, you're going to save yourselves and your loved ones and your neighbors and your church mates and your workmates. You're going to save yourselves an enormous amount of unnecessary misery. You're going to add many, many healthful years to your life, and you're going to save yourselves a gob of money. And I always like to start out with longevity because it's something you can measure. And my goal as a physician was to help my patients live to be an average of 100. I felt that I could do a good job if I could add 25 years to the average person's life over and above the standard average American, which is 75. And to that end, I spent a lot of time studying and reading everything I could on animal and human longevity. And you're going to get a little bit of this here this morning. And so we'll get going. And if Kamal, if you could please turn out the lights, I'd be grateful. Perfect. And we'll start out with this one here. A lot of my patients would say, Doc, I don't think I want to live to be 100 because I don't want to be in a nursing home and have tubes and wires and all these monitors hooked up to me and be an invalid. And that was a very good question. That was a very good concern. And so I started researching it. And if you live to be 100, you're going to be in pretty good shape. 75 to 80% of the people who live to be 100 are actually quite bright, mentally alert, physically able. And I'll show you some examples. Ralph Charles, for instance, from Somerset, Ohio, back in October of 1999, turned 100, and on his 100th birthday, he was still piloting charter flights with a single-engine Aranca Defender aircraft. There was no restrictions on his health papers or his license at age 100. And to me, he looks like he's about 75, 80 years old. Doesn't look like what you would picture somebody who's 100 years of age. This next fellow is a businessman, Weir McDonald, from Eugene, Oregon, and in April of 1999 he turned 100 and had his 100th birthday, and he still didn't want to retire. He'd built up a candy business to $100 million a year in sales. He was having too much fun to retire, and so he's still working 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, administering his $100 million a year candy company. Looks like he's still having fun with the girls. This next fellow is a golfer, Harold Stilson from Deerfield Beach, Florida, back in May of 2001. This fella hit his 6th hole-in-one at age 101. And I thought that was spectacular. 108-yard par 3 hole-in-one at age 101. And you know he didn't have Alzheimer's disease because he's laughing and have a good time in the picture. He's color coordinated, so you know he doesn't have Alzheimer's disease. This next fellow is another golfer, Harley Potter, not Harry Potter, but Harley Potter. Back in 1995, September of 1995, he was 103 and still golfing every week. Won every tournament he ever participated in. That's because he was the only one in his age group, I think. But if you're not familiar with golf, you don't have to worry about it because Harley didn't start playing golf until he was 92. And so there's plenty of time to learn. If you haven't already learned, you can still get there. Here's a couple of fellows from New York City. On your left, Herbert Young, 112 years of age. And on your right, Robert Thomas at 103. This is back in March of 1999. They had gone to France to pick up some medals they'd won in the First World War and drink some French wine. Looks like they're still having some fun. This lady here in 1995, Sarah Noss from Philadelphia, turned 115. And to me, she looks pretty good, pretty bright and alert for 115 years of age. And I think this is probably a true statement. It's the survival of the fittest. If you do well when you're young, you're going to make it to 100. And so you have to start preparing for that now. My favorite birthday announcement is a gal from France, Jean Calment. Back in February of 1995, she was documented by the Guinness World Book of Records as being the oldest living woman in the world. There were actually hundreds of women who claimed to be older than she, but they didn't have the paperwork to prove it. Jean Calment had the paperwork to prove to the satisfaction of the Guinness World Book of Records that February 21st, 1995, she was in fact 120. And in February 21st, 1996, she turned 121. February 21st, 1997, she turned 122. And she died in August of 1997 at age 122 years and 162 days. She was 122 and a half when she died suddenly of a stroke. She was bright and mentally alert until the day she died. Did not have diabetes, heart disease, or cancer. You do see that she had rheumatoid arthritis in her hands, but not too bad. 122 and a half when she died. Now, the oldest current woman in the world that's documented is a lady from the little Caribbean island nation of Dominica. And she was born in January 27, 1875. Her name is Elizabeth Israel. And this is a year-old study. Back in January of 2001, she turned 126. January of 2002, she turned 127. And you can look up her website, elizabethisrael.com. And starts out with her story as a child and goes through her whole life. And it's a very interesting lady. And just so you fellows don't think it's only ladies that reach these grand old ages, this next one is a guy who was a beef farmer from a little town outside of Kathmandu, Nepal in the Himalayan mountains. And this guy, being a beef farmer, ate red meat every day. He smoked a couple of packs of cigarettes a day for 120 years, you know, did everything wrong. And in April of 1998, he died at age 141. My favorite obituary is this lady here, Mazumi Dusti from Iran. In January of 1995, she died at age 161, according to the Rocky Mountain News Wire Service out of Denver. And you have to give a lot of credibility to this obituary because she was survived by 6 living children ranging in age from 120 to 128. Now, we have the genetic capacity, according to experts, to live to be well beyond 200. We've always had that genetic capacity, and some people say 225, some people say 300. And, of course, our goal is to get there and be in good health when we arrive there. And so what we're going to do today is I'll teach you how to live to be 120 to 140, and then when you get to 120 to 140, we'll do a graduate course, and I'll teach you how to get to 200. But basically, if you use all the information we know about health and longevity, that it's not too hard. Now we got to have a starting place, and I thought this would be very useful. Phil Oliver provided this for me, and this is a demographic profile of African Americans when it comes to longevity. And when you look at the average life expectancy for the black male in America, it's 64.9, just about 65 years of age, and white males is 72.3. So you're getting about 7 more years in longevity for the average white male as opposed to the average black male. You think that's genetic? No, it's not genetic. We'll show you why in just a second. Then the average black female, the average lifespan is 73.4, and for the average white female is 78.9. So there's about a 5-year difference between the black females and the white females. And again, it's not genetic. And so we're going to get into that a little bit today, and we're going to help you out, and I think you'll find some real benefit from today's session. Now, the reason why we have not fulfilled our genetic potential for longevity, even though we have the capacity to live to be 120, 140, 200, there's been things that stood in our way. And the things that have stood in our way are called medical dogmas. Medical dogmas are lies that a doctor will profess to you as being a fact. And if they base their diagnoses and their treatments and their prescriptions on these medical dogmas and lies, the odds are you're not going to live to be 100. The odds are you're going to be sick and miserable for the last 15 to 20 years of your life. And so we're here to kind of share the truth with you. Now, the first medical dogma and lie we're going to look at has to do with the claim that we have the best healthcare system in the world. Now, nobody would be happier than me if that were true. But I'm a scorecard kind of guy, and so I kind of looked around to find out where we really truly ranked in the world. And in April of 1990, the World Health Organization and the Center for Disease Control right here in Atlanta did a study, or reported on a study they had done, where they looked at the fertilizer consumption, the industrial production, per capita income, education, all kinds of things, birth rate, death rate, and average longevity of the top 32 industrialized nations on earth, the first world countries, if you will. And they were shocked to find out that in April of 1990, about 12 years ago, the United States ranked 17th in longevity. There's actually 16 other countries whose peoples live longer than we did back in April of 1990. And we lived to be 75 at that time. And you have to ask yourself, well, who is number one? And what did they do different from us? Well, the Japanese were number one. They lived to be 79.1, 4.1 years longer than we did. The Japanese came in a year and a half longer in average lifespan than the Swiss and the Icelanders, who came in second and third, which shows you that their extreme long life is not a fluke. If it was a fluke, they might just live 1/100th of 1 year longer than who came in second and third, but they're way out in front by a year and a half. The Japanese also have 85% less cardiovascular disease than Americans do. They have 85% less breast, prostate, and colon cancer than we do. And yet, according to Western doctors, the Japanese do everything wrong. The Japanese, of course, smoke 5 packs of cigarettes a day on the average. 68% of all Japanese smoke heavily. That's when you take the average Japanese. When you look at just women, only 14% of women in Japan smoke, so you know that if the average is 68, it's almost 100% of the men heavily smoke. And then the Japanese fry everything. They fry rice, they fry vegetables, tempura, stir fry, and they eat raw fish with worms in it, sushi. And the Americans dropped 2 atomic bombs on them. They've had more radiation per person than any other culture on earth, and yet they still live 4.1 years longer than we do and have 85% less cancer and 85% less cardiovascular disease than we do. They also consume 12 grams of salt a day. Now, according to experts, you're only supposed to have less than 1 gram of salt a day, and the Japanese consume 12 grams of salt a day, yet they have 85% less cardiovascular disease than we do. So we have a huge problem here, and you can say, well, come on, maybe there was a faulty study. That was 12 years ago. Certainly things have gotten better. Well, the World Health Organization, the Center for Disease Control out of Atlanta, Georgia, reran the study 10 years later in June of 2000, and the Japanese remained number one back in June of 2000, 10 years after the initial study, but they dropped from 79.1 down to 74.5, and so this was our chance to catch up with them. This is our chance to run past them, but we dropped from 17th in longevity all the way down to 24th. Okay, during that same 10-year period. Our healthcare system stinks. If you look at the scorecards, things that give you some clue as to how well we're doing. If we're doing everything right, we should be number one when it comes to longevity, but now we rank 24th. Currently, there's 23 other countries whose peoples live longer than we do, and there's a very basic reason for this. There are no laws requiring a doctor to cure you even when a cure is available. There are no laws that require doctors to prevent diseases in you even when prevention is available. There's no laws requiring pharmaceutical companies only to sell cures. And so the dream of all dreams for pharmaceutical research scientists and doctors is to find a drug that you have to be on for the rest of your life but doesn't cure you. Now, if they cure you with a drug in 8 to 10 days or 8 to 10 to 14 days, you don't need them anymore. And so they're not going to find a drug that cures you in just 10 to 14 days. That's not their goal. They're going to be broke. And so their goal is to find something you're going to be on forever. And every time a doctor puts you on insulin or high blood pressure medication or heart medication, they look you in the eye and very sternly will say, you're going to be on this forever. You'll be on this for the rest of your life. And then he goes back in the back room, goes, yes, yes, okay? Because he just got his Mercedes payment. For every 100 of those prescriptions he writes, he gets a kickback. There's $14 billion a year in kickbacks to doctors from the pharmaceutical industry each year in America alone, $14 billion. And it's a huge carrot, to say the least. It's a huge carrot. They actually make more money in kickbacks than they do from office calls. So it's a huge carrot. And it's kind of funny how doctors will believe animal research when it comes to pharmaceuticals because they get $14 billion a year to believe it. Now, if doctors got $14 billion a year to believe animal research when it came to nutrition, they'd be running up and down the aisles of the church yelling, "Hallelujah, I believe it's all nutrition." But you see, there's nobody giving them that incentive, so they don't believe. You can say, well, maybe we're giving up longevity for quality. Well, let's look at the quality of the healthcare systems in the world. And the United States, when it comes to quality of healthcare, the United States does worse. We rank 37th when it comes to quality in healthcare. You look at the G7 countries, the richest and most technologically advanced countries in the world, called the G7 countries. The UK or England ranks 18th, Germany 25th, Canada 30th, and the United States 37th. All the countries that try to mimic our healthcare system don't do very well, and they're the richest and the most technologically advanced healthcare systems in the world. And so we have a huge problem when you look at the statistics. Well, people always ask me, Doc, how do we change the system? Well, it's not a better antibiotic. It's not a better cortisone or prednisone. It's not a better insurance plan, because none of those things will affect the outcome. In 1998, the entire world spent $2.7 trillion for healthcare. And out of that $2.7 trillion for healthcare in 1998, America spent $1.5 trillion. We spent more than half the entire world's expenditure for healthcare, and yet we dropped from 17th in longevity all the way down to 24th, spending that kind of money. So it's not just more money. It's not just a better antibiotic. It's not a better vaccination. It's not a better cortisone. It's not a better estrogen, because none of those things are going to change what's happened. As you see, just following doctor's advice, cholesterol-lowering medication. We still dropped from 17th in longevity down to 24th. And so what that tells you, I mean, you can be a 4th grade student, and you know what the answer is. The answer is you got to change the whole system. Just doing more of the same isn't going to get you anywhere. And so the only way to do that is to boycott the system. You do not want to go to doctors any more often than you have to, and that requires education. You have to educate yourself and take responsibility, and the more things you can do for yourself, the less you need to use doctors, the more likely they are to change. That's right. That's when their waiting rooms are empty, they're going to be cooperative. When their waiting rooms are full, they're not going to be cooperative. When there's a 3-month waiting list for a doctor to take on a new patient, they're not going to be cooperative. The only time they're going to be cooperative is when their waiting rooms are empty, and nobody knows better how to do that than you guys do. Okay? And so you have to change the system, otherwise you're going to keep getting the same thing. You know, the definition of insanity is you do the same thing over and over and over and expect a different outcome. Okay, it's not going to happen. All right, quickly, raise your hand if you've ever heard that exercise is good for you. Okay, good. We're all on the same page here. You got to be dead. Even this little guy has heard that, right? And again, I'm a scorecard kind of guy, and this is the next medical dogma and lie we're going to look at. If exercise is good for you, then it should show up in studies. And so I began to look for studies that would show that exercise helps you live longer. There's not a single study which shows that exercise helps you live longer. And when I started looking into that, I found that there's never been a single professional athlete ever lived to be 100. My red flags began to go up, because if exercise was good for you, there should be a significant percentage of professional athletes living to be 100, because nobody exercises more than professional athletes, and they get paid to do it, so they're not going to cheat. Well, you start looking at some of the famous athletes that should have done well. People like Jesse Owens, the first man to ever win 4 gold medals in the Olympics, in the same Olympics. He died at 66. And then you have people like Jim Thorpe and Red Grange, and there was Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and Sugar Ray Robinson. Wilt Chamberlain just died a couple of years ago at age 63 of congestive heart failure in a hospital while they're trying to stabilize him so he could have 2 hip replacement surgeries so the doctor could get famous. Yeah, and then Flojo died at 34. And then in 1995, the darlings of the figure skating world, the Grinkov, Sergei Grinkov and his wife, they'd won 4 gold medals in the previous year, 2 in the Olympics and 2 in the World Games. And he dies at age 28 at a heart attack in November of 1995. Cardiomyopathy heart attack, a simple deficiency of the trace mineral selenium. And then Reggie Lewis, captain of the Boston Celtics, 4% body fat, as fit as a human being could be. Great young man. Died at age 27 of a cardiomyopathy heart attack, a simple selenium deficiency. Then Walter Payton, one of the last great gentlemen, I think, in professional athletics. He never shot his limo driver. He never beats up referees, doesn't get drunk and fly into telephone poles and cuss people out. This fella never drank, did drugs, never smoked. He was a very religious man, went to Bible study every Wednesday night, went to church every Sunday morning. Even on the road, he never missed his church commitment. And Walter Payton died at age 45 waiting for a liver transplant. I have two more to share with you, and I'll tell you why athletes don't fare so well. This next fellow was not a professional athlete, but he was a serious athlete. He was a professional, so I'm going to throw him in here and you'll see why. His name was Dr. James Cornyn. He was a cardiologist from Paradise, California, which is about an hour's car ride north of San Francisco. His wife was a cardiologist. They had two cardiologists under the same roof, okay? And they were exercise freaks. They'd wake up in the morning 2 hours before they were supposed to be at the clinic in the hospital to see patients and do their surgeries. And they would jog for 2 hours in the paths through the redwoods and the big pines and watch the skunks and the butterflies and the birds and the deers, and they would find their way down to the hospital and they'd take their showers and get in their scrubs and have breakfast together. They only had 2 meals a day because they wanted to stay slim and fit. They would have breakfast and dinner together, and over the lunch hour when the weather was nice, they would rollerblade through town and play tennis, and when the weather was rainy or drizzly or inclement, they would play racquetball indoors and run on an indoor track. They rock climbed indoors and outdoors. They downhill skied, cross-country skied. They would go every summer for a couple of weeks up to Alaska and hike up in the high mountains. And being two cardiologists under the same roof, they would do everything right. They'd watch each other and make sure they did everything right because they loved each other. And I'm sure they took their aspirin every day to keep their blood thin. I'm sure they took their cholesterol-lowering drugs, Mevacor, Lipitor, and Loped to get their cholesterol down below 200. I'm sure they didn't eat salt. I'm sure they didn't eat eggs. I'm sure they did not eat red meat. They ripped the chicken skin off their chicken before they ate it. They didn't take any vitamins, minerals, and trace minerals because they believe you can get everything you need by eating your basic 4 food groups. And despite doing everything right, despite having two cardiologists under the same roof, Dr. James Cornyn dies at age 48 of a heart attack. Now, if you were one of his heart patients, would you continue to do what he was asking you to do? No, I wouldn't. I'd do just the opposite because I wouldn't want to get what he got, right? Yeah, I wouldn't even go look at him in the box, okay? Now, if he said that 30 minutes of exercise a day was good for you, I'd turn out to be one of those pantomime guys, you know? That would be my level of exercise. I wouldn't even blink during the waking day. If he said no eggs, I'd be eating 25 eggs a day. I would do just the opposite of what he said because I wouldn't want to get what he got. And that's the way we have to think, okay? If the results aren't coming out the way the doctor says, then he's giving you bad advice. Now, the last one I have to share with you was a guy who was a coach and an athlete. His name was Dr. Tom Dowling. He was a PhD type of doctor, and he was from Kansas City, Missouri, and he taught track and field and coached track and field in high schools and junior colleges, and he tried to cover all his bases. He was a vegan, a vegetarian that did not eat any animal products whatsoever. He only ate perfect mixes of grains, legumes, vegetables, fruits, and nuts. This man was considered a master at practicing and teaching yoga around the world. He ran the marathon every month, 26.2 miles every month for 25 years. I mean, this guy was a dedicated long-distance runner, and he did that to show his students if they wanted to be a world-class athlete, they had to be dedicated and not miss their practices and so forth. And he was very well thought of. He was always considered Mr. Fitness in the town of Kansas City, Missouri. And when he was 47 years old, Tom Dowling got an irregular heartbeat, and he did what he thought was the righteous thing to do. He went to the top cardiologist in Kansas City, Missouri, who put him on a treadmill, and he did the treadmill and the stress test, and an hour after the treadmill, he drops dead of a heart attack. Now, you could say, come on, Wallach, you're picking out extraordinary events. No, this is very common. According to the Center for Disease Control, 100,000 kids under the age of 30 in America die each year from heart attacks and other sudden causes of death during athletic events. 100,000 a year. According to the Center for Disease Control, 300,000 Americans die each year over the age of 30 while they're exercising or participating in some sport. And his coach was a guy by the name of Jim Fixx. How many of you heard of Jim Fixx? Sure, well, Jim Fixx was the guy who started the whole personal fitness program idea back in the 1970s. He believed if you ran 10 miles a day, you're going to live to be 100. And he purposely, consciously excluded even vitamin-enriched foods because he didn't want to muddy the water and have people say, well, it was the vitamins you were taking. So he consciously avoided all vitamin-containing enriched foods. He only ate raw foods, and he was a vegetarian. And Jim Fixx was really the creator of Nike shoes and Reeboks and all these sporting equipment and all the various health clubs and gyms and all this equipment you see marketed on television. Without Jim Fixx, there wouldn't be any of that. He was the guy that started that whole thing. Well, Jim Fixx died at age 52 of a heart attack. Now, why is it that all of America, 300 million people, believe that fitness is good when the guy who started the whole thing died at age 52 of a heart attack? That's because Nike and Reebok, that's because all these gyms aren't going to come to you and say, well, Jim Fixx was wrong. And we're just going to shut down our businesses and go away because he was wrong. They built up this huge infrastructure, and the whole thing is based on, they've got employees, they've got businesses and so forth, and so they're going to keep marketing and keep the business alive. And so you have to be smarter than that. Well, the reason why athletes don't fare so well is because athletes sweat more in 5 years than couch potatoes do in 75 years. When you're sweating, you're not just sweating out water, you're sweating out a soup that contains all 60 essential minerals. They're called essential minerals because if any of them are missing for any length of time, you get some horrible degenerative disease, many of which are life-threatening. So this is a no-brainer. Who's more likely to die of one of these life-threatening mineral deficiency diseases? An athlete who's sweating out quarts and quarts of this mineral-rich soup every day, or a couch potato in an air-conditioned den, laying on the couch, belching and farting, and eating popcorn and surfing through the channels, but not sweating. Who's going to live longer? The couch potato is going to live longer than the athlete, and that's what statistics show. And if you're sweating, whether it's from work, if you're a roofer, a carpenter, a farmer, or if you're a plumber, an electrician, if you're a carpet layer, you're a dance instructor, you work in a bakery, if you're sweating, or you're a amateur athlete or professional athlete, and you're just drinking water, are you replacing the minerals you're sweating out? No, not even close. What about iced tea? Nope. What about some of these coffees, the Poca Mocha lattes and all those kind of things? Not even close. What about all these diet drinks and Coca-Colas and Pepsi-Colas and so forth? Mountain Dew, Dr. Pepper, are you replacing all those 90 essential nutrients, the 60 essential minerals? No. You might get one mineral, phosphoric acids, in these soft drinks. And then, we got a drug dealer. Okay, got to edit that out. Put it on no ring if you can. Any rate, where was I? Oh, soft drinks. Thank you. I just finished soft drinks. So he's going to edit this out, so we'll have a little laugh over it. Any rate, if it's not soft drinks, what about Gatorade and Powerade? Gatorade and Powerade. Are those the answer? No. They're only electrolytes, sugar, and yellow and blue dye number 3, 5, and 8. Okay, what are electrolytes? Well, electrolytes are nothing but salt water. When doctors want you to consume salt, they say, drink electrolytes. When they don't want you to have salt, it's sodium. Isn't that funny? They even use a different voice. That's sodium. Don't eat that sodium. But electrolytes are okay. Okay? And so they're going to give you 3 of the minerals you need. Sodium, chloride, and potassium. Where are you going to get the other 57? See? And so American Longevity has come up with a complete sweat replacer. It doesn't taste like sweat, tastes like Hawaiian Punch, but it has everything known to be in human sweat. You'd be amazed at how many people have gotten their PhD degrees studying human sweat. And so the Sports Tech by American Longevity has all of the vitamins, all the amino acids. It has the electrolytes, major minerals, trace minerals, rare earths, and plus it has 3 time-release energy sources, and it's a concentrate. You can put an ounce of the Sports Tech per quart of drinking water, and you'll trickle charge those nutrients back into yourself as you're sweating them out, whether you're working or playing, and you'll literally add many, many healthy years to your life, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 healthy years to your life. Sweating for any reason and not replacing the minerals you're sweating out is suicide. Sweating for any reason and not replacing the minerals you're sweating out will cut your lifespan in half. Just that one thing will cut your lifespan in half. Now the next medical dogma and lie we have to look at has to do with hypertension, high blood pressure, and salt. Now, whether you believe it or not, how many of you ever heard that using a salt shaker can be dangerous and increase your risk of hypertension, heart disease, and stroke? Sure. That's one of those icons. Doctors want you to believe that. Well, what's the first thing that a good farmer puts out for their livestock? Salt block or salt lick, isn't it? And I refuse to believe that my human patients are dumber than a cow, because there's nobody out in the pasture telling a cow she's limited to 1 lick a day, is there? No. And so I'll tell my patients, look, pick up a salt shaker and you'll see that lightning won't strike you. You can go ahead and salt your food to taste, salt your body. Nothing bad is going to happen. And 98% of my patients love it. They bring me hundreds of new patients every month who want to use salt and not feel guilty about it. And the 2%, the bean counters, they say, now Wallach, we love you and respect you, but you have this high-priced cardiologist that says you're flying in the face of all the weighted medical evidence. You can't tell people that you use a salt shaker. You're going to leave this trail of dead people behind you with all this hypertension and heart disease and stroke. Well, I've been redeemed in my view on salt. This came out in July of 1997. This was presented at the annual meeting at the American Heart Association. The focus should not be on salt. Doctors lack proof that too much salt is unhealthful. And after years of telling healthy people that too much salt isn't good for them, researchers still don't have solid evidence to back up that claim. And if high blood pressure was simply salt, that'd be an easy thing to prove. But there's not a single study that shows that if you restrict salt, that's going to reduce your risk of high blood pressure and add 10 seconds to your life. There's never been a single study which shows if you already have high blood pressure and you restrict salt, that it's going to cure your high blood pressure, add 10 seconds to your life. Not a single study. So if a doctor tells you to cut back on your salt, you can say, Doc, you're a quack. You're giving me unsubstantiated medical advice for profit. Sit back in your chair and enjoy the show, because there's never been a single study that backs up what the doctor is telling you. In fact, the American Heart Association, not me, says the minimum daily requirement for salt or sodium chloride for an average-sized person, 130 pounds to 150-pound person who's not sweating, is a heaping teaspoon, 3 grams of salt a day. And if you don't consume it, you increase your risk of a heart attack by 400%. Now, before you get all nervous about that, remember the Japanese consume 12 grams of salt, 4 times as much as that a day, and they have 85% less cardiovascular disease than we do. And following doctors' advice, we dropped from 17th in the world longevity down to 24th. I'm going to keep coming back to that. If we were doing everything, and 85% of people followed doctors' advice. And yet we dropped from 17th in longevity down to 24th. Well, we know that salt has nothing, absolutely nothing, to do with high blood pressure. It's not genetic, although doctors want you to believe because you're an African American, you're doomed to get it sometime in your life because it's in your genes. That's absolute nonsense. There's a wonderful study that came out a little over 3 years ago now. It was a cover article in Scientific American back in February of 1999. And what they did was go to Nigeria, out in the bush where people live in a very primitive situation, and they're doing a study on high blood pressure in African Americans. And they went into Nigeria, out in the bush where people live in a primitive situation, and they started taking blood pressure, and they found out that 7% of the people in Nigeria living out in the bush, very primitive, don't even read, and so they don't know what doctors are saying, they're just doing what they naturally do. 7% of those people had high blood pressure, hypertension, 7%. They came back to the United States, did DNA testing, and found groups of people whose ancestors had originated in Nigeria, started taking their blood pressure, and 33% of them had high blood pressure, and they immediately say it's not genetic. Because if it was genetic, it'd be 7% and 7%. You see, if it was genetic, it'd be 7% and 7%. But it's just simple nutritional deficiency. They're getting a lot of these things over there, nothing over here. And remember, I'm a veterinarian as well as a physician. How many of you can ever remember giving calcium channel blockers and beta blockers for high blood pressure to your dog and your cat and your goldfish and your bird? You don't do it. Not because animals can't get high blood pressure, but because we put everything in their food so they don't get it. We put everything in their food so they don't get it. Remember that back 50 years ago, an old dog was 10 years old, an old cat was 12 years old. Today, an old dog's 20, an old cat's 25. Not because of genetic engineering, but because of all the vitamins and minerals and trace minerals that we put in their food. It's that simple. Well, so I went into my veterinary background. Why don't we see clinical high blood pressure in dogs and cats? Well, it's because we put all the minerals in there, and we know from a variety of sources that the cause of high blood pressure in animals and people is a simple calcium deficiency. You can drink 50 gallons of milk a day, and you can't get enough calcium to get your blood pressure down in the normal range. You can eat 25 pounds of cheese a day. And the only thing that'll happen is you'll need a jackhammer to have a bowel movement. You'll be so constipated, if you didn't have hemorrhoids before, you're going to get them. Okay? Absolutely. And so I looked into my veterinary background again, and sure enough, we found a way that we could enhance the calcium to the point where you can take a modest dose of it, would be comfortable, and yet you could get your blood pressure down into the normal range. It's called OsteoCal. It's a colloidal chelate. There's no other liquid calcium on the market like it. It's the only one that's a colloidal chelate. We took a chelated calcium and ground it so fine that we turned it into a colloid. And there's 1,200 milligrams per serving. And we want you to take 2 of those servings a day with a basic nutritional program, which I'll talk about in a second. And 95 to 98% of the time, within a week or 10 days, that blood pressure comes down into the normal range. It's just that quick. It doesn't matter who you are, what race you belong to. 95 to 98% of all high blood pressure not associated with kidney disease is a simple mineral deficiency. Is that simple? I'll tell you a quick story. I'll tell you 2 stories. One, very famous person in your community here in Atlanta, Martin Luther King III, had high blood pressure, and we gave him this little program, and in just 3 days, his blood pressure's been in the normal range for the 3 months that he's been using the program. And he's very, very excited about that, and it's going to become a major thing with him. He wants to be able to wipe out high blood pressure in the black community, and we'll be able to do it in 90 days. If we get everybody in the black community on this little nutritional program in 90 days, high blood pressure will be a thing of the past. It doesn't matter how long you've had it or how old you are. I'll tell you a quick story about Russ Treeweiler from Yuma, Arizona. He'd had high blood pressure for 38 years. For 38 years, he'd been on at least 5 medications. When he'd have his heart attacks, which he had several, they'd run him up to about 20 medications, and after a year, they'd get him back down to 5. And 4 years ago, he got on this little program I'm going to share with you in a minute. And within a week, his blood pressure went in the normal range for the first time in 38 years. And he called me up so excited. I was in San Diego, and he calls me up and he says, "Doc, you're not going to believe this." So my blood pressure is 125 over 75. I mean, it hasn't been below normal for 38 years, and I've been on every kind of medication the medical profession can throw at me. And I went to the doctor because I couldn't believe it, and the doctor ran it, and he had me sit out in the lobby for an hour and come back in and do the blood pressure thing. It was still low, and I did it 6 times over the day. I had to go sit out in the lobby and read magazines and come back because they couldn't believe it. They thought I was on some other medication. And I said, "Well, just calm down, stop hyperventilating, and tell me the story." He says, "Well, can I tell you tomorrow? Can I call you back tomorrow and tell you?" I said, "Well, sure you can, but why won't you tell me now?" He says, "Well, the worst side effect of all those high blood pressure medications for 38 years was I couldn't have sex." He said, "I got a date tonight. You're going to have to wait till tomorrow." Whether you believe it or not, next medical dogma and lie, whether you believe it or not, how many of you heard that high blood cholesterol and triglycerides are bad for you? Oh yeah. How many of you heard that they're the root of all evil when it comes to cardiovascular disease? Sure, everybody knows that. Well, that's an absolute lie. There's not a single disease of any kind, let alone cardiovascular disease, that's caused by elevated blood cholesterol and triglycerides. If you can find me any disease that's caused by an elevated blood cholesterol or triglycerides, I'll give you $1 million in small bills in any offshore account you want. There's not a single disease that's caused by elevated blood cholesterol and triglycerides. Raise your hand if you can ever remember your veterinarian getting excited about your dog or your cat or your bird or your goldfish or your livestock blood cholesterol. No, we've known for 75 years in the animal industry that cholesterol is not a boogeyman. Cholesterol is just kind of a warning signal, much like a fever is. A fever doesn't cause infections, but you get a fever when you have an infection with a virus, a bacteria, fungus, or a yeast, or parasites. You can get a fever when you get a broken leg. You get a fever when you get cancer. Babies get a fever when they teeth. And a doctor has to kind of sort through them. Same way when you have elevated blood cholesterol and triglycerides. They don't cause any problems, but they're caused by very common diseases like low thyroid, hypothyroidism, or goiter is one of the more common causes of elevated blood cholesterol and triglycerides. So when somebody to me has low or high blood cholesterol and triglycerides, the first thing I look at is low thyroid. I want to find out if they have a low thyroid. The second most common cause of elevated blood cholesterol and triglycerides is diabetes. When you have diabetes, you're always going to have elevated blood cholesterol and triglycerides, but they don't cause any disease. And then you can have deficiencies of niacin, chromium, vanadium, the essential fatty acids. You can have liver disease and get elevated blood cholesterol and triglycerides, but they don't cause any disease. The Eskimos above the Arctic Circle have a traditional diet that's 98% red meat and blubber. They eat nothing but whale meat and whale blubber, walrus meat, walrus blubber, seal meat, seal blubber, bear meat, bear fat. Not a single Eskimo above the Arctic Circle owns a Mr. Juice Man juice or eats organically grown broccoli. and yet their blood cholesterols range from 250 to 350, and they don't get cardiovascular disease. They're legendary for not getting cardiovascular disease until they come down into the lower 48 and eat like us. Well, knowing all that, I felt very confident in telling my patients, look, if we do what everybody else does and lower your cholesterol and get you off of salt, no red meat, no eggs and things like that, we're going to get what everybody else gets. You're going to live to be 75.5, give or take a few years, and we'll be wasting our time. My goal is to get you to live to be 100, so we're going to do something different. If you want to do what everybody else is doing, go see another doctor because you're going to lower my average, right? And so I want you to eat butter and dairy products every day. I expect you, instead of margarine. I expect you to use salt. I want you to salt your food to taste. Don't worry about it because it's very hard to get 12 grams of salt out of a salt shaker. Try. You'll be all day trying to do that. It's almost impossible, so don't worry about salting your food to taste. Remember, the Japanese consume 12 grams of salt a day and have 85% less cardiovascular disease than we do. And then I want you to eat 6 eggs a day. I want you to eat 2 eggs for breakfast, either poached or soft-boiled, hard-boiled, soft scrambled in butter at low temperatures. I want you to eat 2 hard-boiled eggs chopped up in a salad for lunch with whatever else you're going to eat. I want you to eat 2 hard-boiled eggs chopped up in a salad for dinner with whatever else you're going to eat. And then I expect you to eat red meat every day. I expect you to eat chicken with the skin at least a couple times a week. If you're the sort of person who tears the chicken skin off your chicken before you eat it, I don't want you as my patient because you're going to lower my average. Get out of here. I expect you to take your supplements. I want you to take all 90 essential nutrients every day. And if you're not prepared to do that, then I don't want you as my patient. 98% of my patients love it. They bring me hundreds of new patients every month who want to eat that way and feel good about it. And then the 2%, the bean counters, they say, now, Wallach, we love you and respect you, but we have this high-priced cardiologist that says you're flying in the face of all the weight of medical evidence. You can't tell people they can eat 6 eggs a day and salt their food to taste, eat butter and dairy products, eat chicken skin and red meat. You're going to clog their arteries with all this gooey cholesterol and saturated fat and triglycerides. Well, I was redeemed again. This came out in November of 1995. It was presented at the annual meeting of the American Heart Association in Anaheim, California. They said 2 eggs a day won't hurt. 2 eggs a day won't hurt. Now, that sent a tidal wave through the medical community, as you can imagine, when that came out. I mean, that just shocked everybody. The American Heart Association says that 2 eggs a day is okay because they had created, with this no egg thing for 60 years, they created industries. Egg beaters, lean cuisine. I mean, you can't pick up a bottle of water without it saying cholesterol free because they know that you read the labels looking for cholesterol. And unless it says cholesterol free, you're not going to buy it, right? And so everybody's paranoid about cholesterol. Well, I thought it was great. This is really why I put this up here. And the first sentence is a lie, so I'm going to quote it so you don't attribute it to me. Quote, cholesterol in the bloodstream is bad for the heart. Absolutely untrue. It's not bad for the heart, not bad for anything. It's an essential nutrient. But here it comes, and since eggs have lots of cholesterol in them, experts have long assumed they must be bad, unquote. Because they have cholesterol in them, experts have assumed that eggs must be bad. Well, once they did the study, they found out that eggs weren't bad. So for 60 years, they've been moving people away from eating eggs because it was a theory. Now, how many of you had somebody in your family live to be in their 80s and 90s? Just about every American's had somebody in their family live to be in their 80s and 90s, and I guarantee they did everything wrong. They ate eggs, they ate their chicken skin, they ate red meat, they used salt, ate in butter and cooked in lard. They smoked behind the barn. If they couldn't afford cigarettes, they smoked catalpa pods and grapevine and all that stuff, right? I mean, we did when we were kids. We were 80 miles from anywhere, so we would smoke what we could get when we were kids. And then I guarantee you that they made white lightning and got drunk behind the barn and all that kind of stuff on the weekends. And the only exercise they did when they came home from work back then was they played checkers or cards or dominoes or bingo or what. That was it. They didn't come home after a hard day's work and run the marathon. They didn't go to the gym and do stair steppers and Tae-Bo. And they lived to be 80, 90 years of age and got us up to 17th in the world in longevity. And then we started listening to doctors and got to do all this exercise, no salt, no chicken skin, no eggs, no red meat, and exercise, and we dropped from 17th in longevity in the world down to 24th. And so you have to come to grips with doctors have been lying to you. That's why dead doctors don't lie, and live doctors do lie. Okay, you have to appreciate that. I was glad to see this come out in March of 1991, 11 years ago. Normal cholesterol in an 88-year-old man who eats 25 eggs a day. You have to ask yourself, why was this old dude eating 25 eggs a day? Maybe he didn't have any teeth and couldn't eat steaks anymore. Maybe his name was Cool Hand Luke. Maybe, and I think this is it, was if you appreciate 95% of the weight of male sex hormone is testosterone, is cholesterol, and cholesterol is a steroid, so testosterone is a steroid hormone. 95% of the weight of testosterone is cholesterol, and this was 8 years before Viagra. And I think he was trying to get his libido up, is what I think. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about when it comes to cholesterol is that over the last 50 years, medical doctors have created no less than 25 new cholesterol deficiency diseases. They have proved now, without a doubt, that cholesterol is an essential nutrient because they have made every effort. They've made every effort. They have done lab tests. They have beat on people. They have given you drugs if you couldn't do it yourself to lower your cholesterol. And so they have created no less than 25 cholesterol deficiency diseases. Mark my words, in the next 2 years, cholesterol will be added to the list of essential nutrients along with vitamin A and the B vitamins and C and E and K and calcium and copper and magnesium and zinc. It's an essential nutrient. And you get diseases when you don't have enough. Well, the worst of the worst disease, the worst physician-caused disease ever, the worst cholesterol deficiency disease, did not even occur 40 years ago, even by another name. They sent in experts to look at all the old autopsy tissues and records, and they couldn't find this disease even by another name 40 years ago. It only became recognized as a medical entity in the United States in 1979 when it first appeared in a medical journal. Now it's in textbooks, of course. Well, today, this cholesterol deficiency disease, the worst of the worst physician-caused diseases, is the number 4 killer of Americans over the age of 65, behind cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes. And the new disease is called Alzheimer's disease. This report came out 2 years ago, March of 2000, and they said at that time, in the next 25 years, between now and 2025, 14 million Americans are going to die of Alzheimer's disease. 14 million! That, in numbers, that's half the Canadian population. The Canadians are only like 28 million. Okay? And from today backwards 25 years, only 250,000 Americans died of Alzheimer's disease, only 250,000. Today forward 25 years, they're projecting 14 million. And that's because the people coming along are the ones who have followed doctors' advice very strictly and given up eggs and red meat and chicken skin and dairy and butter and so forth. And as a result, they have created this terrible disease. Now, doctors want you to believe that Alzheimer's disease is genetic. They always want to ask you, have you had anybody in your family with Alzheimer's? Oh, we got to get you on this program now because you already got in your family, it's genetic, you're going to get it. That's absurd, absolute lie. Well, first of all, the human brain contains a substance called myelin. It's an insulating material that you find in every animal and human brain. It's called myelin. It's a fatty substance. And it's so important to the brain, it makes up 75% of the brain weight. 75% of the human brain weight and animal brain weight is myelin. And myelin is 100% cholesterol. Myelin is 100% cholesterol. When you take a slice through a normal animal and human brain, you see all the nerve fibers running parallel, and they're wrapped up in this myelin insulating sheath, kind of like fiber optics. They got this insulation stuff, it's myelin. Well, when you have a slice of a human brain or an animal brain with Alzheimer's disease, those nerve fibers are naked. They don't have the insulation. They've all kind of snapped back together like rubber bands, and they look like a backlash in your fishing reel. I don't know how to make it any more clear explanation than that. It just looks like a backlash in a fishing reel. Well, doctors want you to believe that Alzheimer's disease is genetic. It's not genetic. It's a simple nutritional deficiency disease. And how many of you ever heard of ibuprofen? Good. Ibuprofen is a simple over-the-counter analgesic or painkiller, anti-inflammatory. People use it for headaches. People use it for dental pain, backaches, arthritis, osteoporosis pain. And there's not a single drug of any kind that can change or alter the rate of appearance of a genetic disease in an animal or human population other than poisons where you kill the people with a bad gene or the good gene, and that's the only way we could change the rate of appearance. But preserving the individual's life, there's no drug that will alter the rate of appearance of a genetic disease. Well, 6 years ago, March of 1996, the Johns Hopkins University Medical School in Baltimore, Maryland, published the results of a 14-year study on 2,000 seniors in America. And they said that one ibuprofen tablet a day could reduce your risk of Alzheimer's disease by 60%. One ibuprofen tablet a day can reduce your risk of Alzheimer's disease by 60%. Now, nobody could believe that because everybody believed it was genetic, so they went to an ongoing study at the University of the Netherlands in Holland where they had 7,000 people, because, well, 2,000 may be too small a study, that can't be right. And they said, well, yeah, it's not right. You can't reduce your risk of Alzheimer's disease by 60% with one ibuprofen tablet a day. They said it's more like 80% you can reduce your risk of Alzheimer's disease. This came out in November 2001. November 2001. Now, if you take one ibuprofen tablet a day, you can reduce your risk of Alzheimer's disease by 60 to 80%. Now, how many of you received a postcard or a letter from your medical doctor telling you that? Now, if your medical doctor was your friend and they truly were interested in helping you, they would immediately send you that postcard. Well, people say to me, well, what if you already have it? I mean, I've got a mama or a grandparent or my spouse, somebody in my family's already got it. Is there anything you can do for that? Well, I'd still give them the one ibuprofen tablet a day. But I would also do something else. Back in July of 1992, the medical school at the University of California, San Diego, and the Salk Institute, famous for the Salk polio vaccine, jointly released the results of a long-term study where they were looking at people with advanced Alzheimer's disease. And they gave these people with advanced Alzheimer's disease 2,000 international units of vitamin E. That's all they did, was give them 2,000 international units of vitamin E, which is high when you look at the minimum daily requirement. The RDA is 15 international units. And so they gave them 2,000 international units, and here's what they said back in July of 1992. Vitamin E can ease memory loss in Alzheimer's patients. They got back a significant amount of their memory and became functional again. Now, they said, well, that had to be a faulty study because everybody knew that it was genetics. That couldn't be true, so they reran it. And they reran it. In April of 1997, they came out with the final study, and here's what they said back in April of 1997. Vitamin E can slow Alzheimer's disease. High doses of common vitamin E can slow the devastating decline for Alzheimer's patients, significantly delaying the need for nursing home care. If you can delay the need for nursing home care for an Alzheimer's patient by 5 years or 10 years, you'll save yourself and your family $500,000 for just 2,000 international units of vitamin E a day. Now, how many of you have received a postcard or a letter from your medical doctor telling you about that one? You see, we all like to believe that our doctors are altruistic and they're in the business of helping people and they just have a nice lifestyle because they get paid for their good work. Well, that's not true. They're very calculated on making that money. And anything that might interfere with the cash flow or the patient flow to them, they do not share with you. They are not in the business of saving you. There is no rule, there is no law requiring them to cure you, even if a cure is available. There is no law requiring them to prevent diseases in you, even if a prevention is available, which puts a lot of responsibility on you and me. We have to educate ourselves, we have to take responsibility, and the more we do that, the better that our families and our community will do. I have two more that I want to talk about, and then we'll get down to the final few moments here, and we'll open it up for questions. Arthritis and osteoporosis is a huge problem in America and in the black community. As I go around this country, it afflicts everybody. According to the Center for Disease Control out of Atlanta, Georgia, 85% of all Americans over the age of 50 have already got arthritis or osteoporosis of one type or another, to one degree or another, and there's not a single medical treatment designed to prevent or fix it. Aspirin, Celebrex, and Vioxx don't fix arthritis and osteoporosis, and they can cause gastric bleeding and death. Celebrex and Vioxx cause pulmonary embolism or blood clots in the lungs, which can cause death. And then there's Tylenol. Tylenol doesn't fix arthritis and osteoporosis, and Tylenol causes 40,000 cases of kidney failure each year in America, 5,000 which are so severe you need a kidney transplant. And then there's ibuprofen, Advil, and Aleve. They don't fix arthritis and osteoporosis. And ibuprofen, you can take one of those a day and reduce your risk of Alzheimer's disease by 60 to 80%. But if you take 5 ibuprofen, Advil, or Aleve tablets 4 and 5 times a day, and like most people do, I mean, they're over the counter, they can't be harmful, right? So they just take handfuls of them all day. You actually increase the risk of liver disease and the need for a liver transplant by as much as 12% over the average American. Okay. Then there's methotrexate and gold shots. They don't fix arthritis and osteoporosis. And methotrexate and gold shots actually subdue your bone marrow so it can't make normal platelets and red blood cells. Prednisone and cortisone don't fix arthritis and osteoporosis, and they actually cause diabetes. If you take them for every day for a year, you're going to get diabetes as soon as God made little green apples. They actually will subdue your immune system, which leaves you open to diseases far, far more horrible than arthritis and osteoporosis. And prednisone and cortisone actually accelerate the loss of minerals from your bones. Something you don't want to have happen if you already have osteoporosis and arthritis. Any doctor who writes you a prescription for prednisone and cortisone when you already have osteoporosis and arthritis should be put in jail for 25 years to life, because when you get compression fractures and get debilitated, when you get a life-threatening fracture of the hip and major leg bone, guess whose fault it was? It was the doctor who wrote you the prescription for prednisone and cortisone. Now, contrary to popular belief, osteoporosis is not a woman's disease. It's both equally found in men and women. Great study here in Canada, 3,000 men, 6,000 women over the age of 50. Both groups, both the men and women, 25% over age 50 already had osteoporosis. So it's found equally in men and women. So fellas, don't think you're going to escape it. Now, when these over-the-counter and prescription medications don't work anymore to relieve pain and inflammation, the only thing left for you medically is joint replacement surgery. And doctors want to put in new knees and hips and shoulder joints and fuse your vertebrae together and do laminectomies and all that kind of stuff. And those procedures never, never, never work over the long haul. They never work over the long haul. And so, what can you do for arthritis and osteoporosis? Now, genetic, totally preventable. We've eliminated them in animals because we can't afford to treat animals like we do people for arthritis and osteoporosis. And so we learn how to prevent them and cure it in animals. Well, there's such a thing called the red warning light on a dashboard of a car or truck. This goes back 50, 60 years ago. Today we have all these digital things, but back then it was a little red warning light would come on when your engine would heat up, and you'd know that you needed more coolant or oil, or maybe you broke a fan belt or split a radiator hose. You'd pull over to the side of the road and fix your engine, and that would cost you maybe $5 or $10, and you'd save yourself a $3,000 engine replacement bill. The village idiot, when he'd see that red warning light come on, he'd say, I don't have time to deal with that. I'm going to miss the movie. My girlfriend's going to be mad. So he whips out a pliers and cuts the wire of the red warning light and keeps on going. Well, is that a smart thing to do? No. Even a Mercedes will burn up if it doesn't have oil and coolant and a fan belt and a radiator hose. Even Mercedes. Well, how many of you know what pain is for? Okay, that's pretty good. Almost everybody. Well, for those of you who don't know, pain is a red warning light for the human body. When you get pain in your foot and your ankle and your knee and your hip and your back and your neck and your shoulders, elbows, wrists, and fingers, your body's saying, don't use those joints until you fix them. And when a doctor gives you a painkiller, an anti-inflammatory, or a muscle relaxant, or any combination of those things, either over-the-counter or prescription, without rebuilding the joints and the bones at the same time, all that doctor's doing is cutting the wire of the red warning light. Because just taking a painkiller without rebuilding the joints is just cutting the wire of the red warning light. Are you going to wear those joints out faster or slower? Faster and faster and faster. And so any doctor who writes you a prescription for pain relievers and anti-inflammatories and muscle relaxants or any combination thereof, or tells you to take an over-the-counter forms of them, without rebuilding the bones and the joints at the same time, should be put in jail for 25 years to life. Okay? Because all they're doing is wearing those joints out faster and faster and faster. Now, the last thing I'm going to ask you, before I suggest to you what I think you should do for arthritis and osteoporosis, is how many of you have ever done this little Mr. Wizard type of experiment at home or school, where you take a chicken drumstick, clean it up real good, and put it into a quart of vinegar for a month? Anybody ever do that? Okay, I want you all to do this. This is a simple but very profound science fair project. If you have a kid or a grandkid and you get them to do this, they'll win a ribbon. I mean, it is that profound of a little experiment. What you do is you take yourself 2 chicken drumsticks, eat the meat off them, clean them up both real good, and use the first one for control. Take it by the ends and try to bend it into a horseshoe. Are you going to be able to do that? No. It's very rigid. It will not like that, but if you force it, it'll snap like a dry twig. You take the second one, clean it up real good, put it into the Heinz corn vinegar, distilled vinegar, just a quart for a month. Put the top on it real tight so it doesn't evaporate. Put it on a shelf for a month. And after a month, take it down and show it to somebody that didn't know what you're doing. Say, Frank, what's in that jar? And they'll look at it, study it for a minute, and say, well, I don't know. It looks like a chicken drumstick bone in a jar of water. Because anatomically, structurally, you can still recognize it as a chicken drumstick bone. It hasn't changed. It might be a little pale because it's been in the vinegar, but structurally, anybody, even a little kid, can recognize it as a chicken drumstick bone. Well, as soon as you open that jar and take this chicken drumstick bone out of the vinegar, it's been in there a month, still looks the same, but when you take it out of that vinegar, you'll notice immediately that something dramatic has happened, because now instead of being a rigid bone that you cannot bend into a horseshoe, now it's like a floppy wet noodle, because the vinegar has leached all the minerals out of that bone. And what is left is a rubbery tendon-like material called bone matrix. Bone matrix makes up 25 to 40% of your bone weight. 40% when you're a kid and a young adult, and at about age 45 to 55, that percentage of bone matrix starts going down from 40% down to about 25%. When you're 60, 65 years old, the bone matrix is about 25% of your bone weight. Now, you cannot lay down new minerals in your bones without first laying down new bone matrix. You cannot lay down new minerals in your bones without first laying down new bone matrix. And how many of you, raise your hand if you've ever had your doctor sit down with you, put his arm around you, and have a nice, warm, fuzzy talk about your bone matrix for a half hour? Okay? Now, they read the same things that I did in school, and I guarantee they know about it, and that's what makes it criminal, because they don't share that information with you. Okay? Now, by actual analyses, human and animal bones contain 60 different minerals. Doctors want you to believe that your bones are just a pile of calcium. And so we have a huge problem here. That's why doctors say, well, you're over age 50, there's nothing we can do to rebuild the bone mass you've lost. But with some estrogen and Fosamax and prayer, luck, and hope, we might be able to slow down the loss of what you have left. Well, we have a problem here because 50% of the people who get osteoporosis are men. Now, I don't know about the rest of you fellas, but I'm not going to take estrogen. I'd rather be a stud than a steer, right? I'd rather be a stud than a steer, so that's not going to happen. So I'm not going to take any estrogen. And so you have to really look at what really causes osteoporosis. So you ask the doctor, okay, well, doc, okay, I got osteoporosis. What causes osteoporosis? Well, it's a calcium deficiency. Well, how are you going to fix me? Well, I'm going to saw the end of your hip off and put a ball in there. Well, I don't know about you, but that doesn't compute with me. That answer didn't seem right. He's going to fix a calcium deficiency by sawing the end of your leg off and putting a metal ball in there. You say, well, I want another opinion. So you go to another doctor, you say, Doc, what causes osteoporosis? And don't tell me about artificial joints, because I want another opinion. He said, well, yeah, osteoporosis is caused by a calcium deficiency, but I'm going to give you estrogen and Fosamax. They're always going for where the dollars are. They're never telling you what the real problem is and how to deal with it. Okay? So I looked into my veterinary background, and sure enough, we have all these formulas that are designed to prevent and cure arthritis and osteoporosis in animals. We don't have insurance to pay for nonsensical surgical and mechanical and drug treatments for nothing more than a simple mineral deficiency disease. And I adapted many of these to human use way back in 1978, and the one that worked the best in 1978 for people I originally called Dr. Wallach's pig arthritis formula, not because there was any pigs in it, but it was designed to prevent and cure arthritis in pigs, worked like a charm for people. And it worked for so many other things over the years. I added stuff to it and made it more complete, and so it evolved into what we call today the pig pack and osteocal. The pig pack and osteocal. There's still no pigs in it, but it has the optimal amounts of all 90 essential nutrients. It's a basic formula we like to use. And if you have arthritis, osteoarthritis, degenerative arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis of the vertebrae, if you have chronic low back problems, disc problems, if you have osteoporosis, fibromyalgia, carpal tunnel syndrome, lupus, scleroderma, if you have loose teeth, receding gums, gingivitis, periodontal disease, if you have a neck that sounds like a bag full of gravel when you turn it, if you have knees that pop and crack when you squat down, if you have bone spurs, heel spurs, or calcium deposits, if you have plantar fasciitis or any one of the other 147 different calcium deficiency diseases are out there, you want to be taking the pig pack and the osteo. Oh, well, I'll throw in high blood pressure and insomnia, because we already talked about the high blood pressure. Throw those in there. You take the pig pack and the osteocal twice a day, and no carbonated drinks, and within 90 days you'll be a new person. Those things will all be gone. Within 90 days. It's just that simple. Okay? Now, I said no carbonated drinks, and the reason why I say no carbonated drinks is because carbonation neutralizes stomach acid, and you cannot absorb minerals, digest protein, or absorb vitamin B12 without stomach acid. You can look in any medical textbook, they tell you that. Okay, and what's the first thing that a doctor wants you to do when you have an upset stomach? They give you an antacid. They want to give you Tums, and now they're saying, oh, well, Tums is as good as a calcium source. Well, there's a lot of calcium in Tums, but can you get it? No, because it's an antacid. It immediately neutralizes your stomach acid, so all the calcium in Tums just goes out the other end. They forget to tell you that part. Well, the Harvard Nurses Health Study, 90,000 nurses over 20 years, they compared the rate of fractures and osteoporosis in those 90,000 nurses over age 35. They found out that the ones that drank one carbonated drink a day, whether it was cola drinks, non-cola carbonated drinks, ginger ale, club soda, Perrier water, didn't matter, any carbonated drink, and increased their risk of fractures and osteoporosis over the ones that just drank water by by something like 500%. And they wanted to know, well, is that effect just in adult women or is it in young girls too? So they went to junior high schools in Boston, and they found 460 junior high school girls in the 9th and 10th grade. This is back in June of 2000. And they put together 3 groups. They had a water drinking group and a non-cola drinking group. These were girls who drank like Mountain Dew and 7-Up and Perrier water and Talking Rain, I guess is another brand of sparkling water, and ginger ale and club soda. And then they had the cola carbonated drinks. And the ones that drank the non-cola carbonated drinks had an increased risk over the water drinkers of fractures and osteoporosis as teenagers by 300%. And the ones that drank cola carbonated drinks had an increased risk in fractures and osteoporosis as teenagers over the water drinkers by 500%. So again, if you have arthritis, osteoarthritis, degenerative arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis of the vertebrae, chronic low back problems, disc problems, fibromyalgia, carpal tunnel syndrome, lupus, scleroderma, insomnia, high blood pressure, loose teeth, receding gums, periodontal disease, a neck that sounds like a bag full of gravel when you turn it, knees that pop and crack when you squat down, chronic low back problems, disc problems, if you have bone spurs, heel spurs, and calcium deposits, plantar fasciitis, if you have any of the other 147 different calcium deficiency diseases, you want to take the Pig Pack and the Osteocal twice a day and no carbonated drinks. And it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if you're 25, 45, 65, 75, 85, 95, or 105. Given the right raw materials, your body will rebuild itself. It doesn't matter how old you are. Your body will rebuild itself. The oldest one that I personally worked with is 97 years old, 90 days from a person who couldn't even lift their own arms. She's running up and down the stairs to get fit, 97 years of age. Yeah, hold the questions again, and I'll answer them in just a minute. We're just about done, and he's going to have to edit some of this stuff out of here, okay? But just hold your questions so we have kind of a tape here, and then I'll answer your questions. The last disease that we have time that we want to talk about this morning is diabetes. There's 1 million new cases of diabetes in America every year now. It's epidemic. There's only 500,000 new cancer cases a year, but there's 1 million new diabetic cases a year in America. There's 32 million diabetics as we speak. That's 12% of the American population are diabetics, and guess who most of them are? African Americans, okay? They want you to believe it's genetic. It is not genetic. Not genetic. We'll get into that in a second. But there's 2 types of diabetes. The first type is what we call juvenile onset type 1 diabetes. They make up 5% of the diabetic population, a small percentage, but very devastating disease. They do not make any insulin. The average lifespan is only 33. The reason why they're called juvenile onset is because historically 99% of them were diagnosed under the age of 12. That's why they call them juvenile onset. 95% of the 32 million diabetics in America, as 29 million of them are what we call adult onset type 2 diabetics. And adult onset type 2 diabetics were historically called adult onset because they only occurred after the age of 50. And just the opposite of juveniles that don't make any insulin, the adult onset type 2 diabetics make more insulin than non-diabetics. They make as much as 10 times more insulin than non-diabetics. Even if somebody says, well, I'm insulin dependent, that doesn't mean anything because the doctor looked them in the eye and said, you're insulin dependent. So they just repeat that. And so you have to know, are they type 2 or type 1? If they're type 2, they have every probability they'll be able to wean off their insulin and go back to a normal life if you supplement them properly. It's just that simple. Well, this real differential in age difference between the type 1 and type 2 diabetics is rapidly changing. Diabetic rate soars for Americans in their 30s. The age group in America that has the most rapid increase in diagnoses of adult onset type 2 diabetes are kids under the age of 12. And breaking that group down even farther, what groups have the biggest percentage? African American kids. Okay? There's 2 reasons for that. Number one, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, back in 1895, 107 years ago, Americans were eating about a half a pound of sugar per person per year. A half a pound of sugar per person per year. Today, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, 107 years later, we're eating 157 pounds of sugar per person per year, which is almost a half a pound a day. That includes all these sugar frosted flakes, Pop-Tarts, Eggos with syrup on it, and then you have the Krispy Kreme donuts, You have apple juice, grape juice. You have all the candy and pies and cookies. There's barbecue sauce, spaghetti sauce, chili, ketchup, just about everything you can think of is just loaded with sugar. Bologna, salami, pepperoni, sugar. Okay? And as a result, we're eating per person just about a half a pound of sugar per person per day now. And that's one of the main reasons why we have so many young kids, especially minority kids, their diabetes rate is going up. It's not because they're black, it's because of the way they're eating. And we have to change that. As adults, we can change that, how these young kids eat. Okay? It's our responsibility, because the doctors aren't going to do it, because when there's more diabetics, there's more Mercedes. Okay? And so it's up to you and me. And the government's not going to do it, and so it's up to you and me. Now the second reason why we have so many diabetics in America is because the mineral cofactors that are necessary for the insulin to work in these adult onset type 2 diabetics are missing in our diet. They're not in optimal amounts anymore. Diseases that used to occur, diabetes, adult onset type 2 diabetes, historically was a disease of people in their 60s. Well, now the biggest growing group of them are 3, 4, 5 years old, because they're taking in so much sugar and they're missing the minerals. Well, this fellow here, Walter Mertz, got his PhD degree in 1957. 45 years ago, he got his PhD degree studying adult onset type 2 diabetes, and he cured and prevented adult onset type 2 diabetes in every kind of laboratory animal, pet animal, and farm animal you can think of with 2 mineral supplements. We've known this for 45 years. How many of you had a doctor tell you that? How many of you had a doctor write you a postcard or letter telling you about Walter Mertz's studies? Now, Walter Mertz is no quack. This guy published his PhD studies and all his articles prior to this in the Federation Proceedings, which is the official journal of the National Institutes of Health. This guy became the director of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which is the largest employee of federal employees in the United States, right out of school. He graduated school and was made the director of the U.S. Department of Agriculture when he was a brand new graduate. Now, does that make sense to you? It didn't make sense to me. Nobody goes from being a new graduate to the top of the biggest federal agency there is. But of course, he was never allowed to lecture on diabetes from the day he graduated. He became the director of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. That's a fact. You can look that up. And he was never allowed to lecture on diabetes. Okay? But fortunately, he published a lot of stuff before he graduated. Well, how many of you have ever heard that the chromium and vanadium can help control blood sugar? That's pretty widely known, and he's the guy that discovered it, Walter Mertz. See, most people don't know his name, Walter Mertz. He's the guy. Now, you've never seen anybody run up and down the aisles of a church saying, "Hallelujah, I've cured my diabetes with chromium picolinate and vanadium vanadyl sulfate." Because you have to eat 200 bottles a day to get enough to make it work. It's the right stuff, but you can't get enough in those farms. All right? This became so important that to keep any one single company from glomping onto that and controlling the world supply, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, in the first time in their history, patented chromium picolinate. They patented it so no individual, no private company could do it. It was that important of a finding. Well, here's what Walter Mertz found out. He started looking at the chromium levels in American blood. And in 1948, he found out in 1948 that there was 28 to 1,000 micrograms per liter, parts per billion, of chromium in American blood. In 71, it dropped to 13. In 72, it dropped to 10. In 73, it dropped to 4.7 to 5.1. In 74, it dropped to 0.73 to 1.6. In 78, it dropped to 0.16. In 80, it came back up a little bit to 0.43, came back down in 85 to 0.13. And today, if you take blood from an adult onset type 2 diabetic, even a child, it's somewhere around 0.01, almost nothing. It's just dropped like a rock since 1948. And here's why. Every square yard in a field, and it doesn't matter if you're growing beets or onions or potatoes or corn or wheat or soybeans or hay or okra or tomatoes or whatever it might be, every year those crops will strip mine anywhere from 1/4 of a pound to 2.5 pounds of minerals per square yard in that field. When those crops are harvested and they're shipped off, that mineral goes with them. And the next year all they put back in is seed and a simple fertilizer known as NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. The purpose is to get the maximum yields in terms of tons and bushels per acre. Nobody puts chromium and vanadium or calcium or magnesium or manganese or boron or copper or zinc back into the soil. All they put in is just enough fertilizer to grow the tonnage and the seeds. And so year after year after year, those plants strip mine that soil and ship off the minerals somewhere. And so that's why the amounts in our bloods drop, because the amount in our food is dropping, and that's because the amount in the soil is dropped. And so that old saying, you can get everything you need just by eating your 4 food groups, is a lie. You cannot get everything you need by eating your basic 4 food groups, for a variety of reasons, including it's not in optimal amounts in our soil anymore. Okay? And once you appreciate that, every once in a while I get somebody say, well, can't we re-nourish the soil? Well, sure, we could do that. Technologically, we could do that. You'd have to go blow up a mountain and pulverize it into dust and analyze it. You say, okay, we got 14 minerals here. Then you need to find a mountain somewhere else that had, say, 8 or 10 or 20 other different minerals. Wouldn't do to have just have more of the same. You have to find some place that had different minerals, blow that up and grind it up, and then every year you have to mix all that stuff up and redistribute it in the fields. An ear of corn would cost you $35 just for an ear of corn to do that. So it's not economically feasible, even though it's technically possible, it's not economically feasible. And so the only way that you can afford to make sure you have all 90 essential nutrients, all 60 essential minerals, is to consciously put them in your mouth. You have to supplement properly. Here's where the pig pack and the osteocal come in. It's designed to do that. Okay? Now you say, well, if that were true, Wallach, my doctor would have told me. There's no way my doctor wouldn't tell me that. They've known that for 45 years. No way he wouldn't tell me. I mean, my doctor belongs to my church. I hear that all the time. Well, let's first look how a doctor treats somebody with diabetes. First of all, they amputate your left toes, and then your left foot, then your left leg. Then they amputate the right toes and the right foot and the right leg. Then they put you on insulin or pills, which they get kickbacks for getting you on those prescriptions. And then there's kidney dialysis, kidney transplant. And then the cardiovascular surgeons get in there and they get you on the blood pressure medications, the cholesterol lowering medications. They do the angiograms and the angioplasties and the stents, and then they do the bypass surgery and the heart transplants, and now they're working on mechanical hearts when your heart wears out. And then the orthopedic and the neurological surgeons want to get in there because you have peripheral neuropathies, you have the pain in your back and your legs and so forth, so they do those surgeries to relieve that pain. The eye doctors get in the act with a laser so they can tack down the detached retina and take out your cataracts. The GAO, the General Accounting Office in America, the agency that monitors our budget, says the average diabetic over the 25 to 40 years they live after diagnoses is worth to the doctor $750,000. So how many of you know a doctor who's honest enough to give up $750,000 to tell you the truth? If they tell 10 people the truth, that's $7.5 million. If they tell 20 people the truth, that's $15 million. And so they're not going to do it. Why would they take a simple $8 short office fee from your insurance company, $8, and say, I want you to get on Dr. Wallach's Duck Pack, which is Walter Mertz's formula, Dr. Wallach's Duck Pack, and just get off of sugar, check your blood sugar every morning, and adjust your medication daily, and the odds are you'll have it significantly reduced or totally weaned off of it in a couple of weeks. I don't need to see anymore. You'll be back to normal. Why would a doctor tell you that when he can make $750,000 doing what doctors do? And so that's why they don't tell you the truth, because there's no law that requires them to tell you the truth. And so whose responsibility is it? It's our responsibility. There's over 500 medical dogmas and lies that we could look at, and we don't have time for those this morning. I would urge you to read the books Let's Play Doctor, Let's Play Herbal Doctor, Rare Earths Forbidden Cures, Dead Doctors Don't Lie. These books, we have the CDs of the same things. We got the audio cassette tapes, the videos, and educate yourself. There's over 500 of these medical dogmas and lies, and the more you learn about them, the more you educate yourself, and the more you know what to do, you will literally add 20, 30, 40, 50 healthy years to your life. You will seriously save yourselves an enormous amount of unnecessary misery, and you'll save yourselves a gob of money. Now, the last thing we have time to talk about here, ladies and gentlemen, is that there are several different types of nutrients out there, and there's 2 reasons why American longevity programs are different. Number one, our products are not just a list of vitamins and minerals. If you look at things like Centrum and One-A-Days and Theragram M and equivalent type of multiple vitamin mineral tablets and capsules from health food stores and drug stores and food stores, They're just a list of vitamins and minerals. They're not designed to do anything. They're a list of vitamins and minerals that say maybe 30% of the RDA, 50% of the RDA, 100% of the RDA, 200% of the RDA, whatever it is. But they're not designed to do anything. By contrast, remember, I'm a veterinarian as well as a physician, and we have science diet dog food. How many of you have heard of science diet dog food? Sure. You go into any veterinarian, they've got science diet dog food. They also have, in the science diet dog food, they have a prescription diet division. And if you have a dog with heart disease, they already have the diet already pre-made for you in a can. It's called HD. HD Science Diet. It's for heart patient dogs. You just open it up and it's the perfect diet for a dog with heart disease. And then they have KD. It's a prescription diet for dogs and cats with kidney disease. And they have ID, which is the perfect prescription diet for dogs and cats with liver disease, pancreatic disease, and intestinal disease, and so on. And so what I've done is taken that concept and put it into these programs. And so we have the duck pack for people with blood sugar problems, everything from hypoglycemia and hyperinsulinemia, narcolepsy, prediabetes, diabetes. We have the cardio pack for people with cardiovascular problems. We have the sports program we've already talked about. We have the pig pack and the osteocal, which is kind of a generic thing, covers most diseases from a nutritional standpoint that you can think of, including high blood pressure and the arthritis and osteoporosis and lupus and so forth. And then we have what we call the stud horse formula for guys that have enlarged prostates, or maybe they're thinking about getting Viagra. The stud horse formula works for them for just the same way without risk of death. We have the Philly pack and the Balance FX and the osteocal for women who are going through menopause or maybe PMS and they're concerned about osteoporosis, and they have maybe night sweats and hot flashes and things like that, or maybe PMS problems. Again, that's the Philly pack, Balance FX, and the osteocal. We have Wallaby pack for kids who are suffering from ADD or ADHD. Doctors want to put them on Ritalin and Prozac. We have 5 million American kids under the age of 12 on prescription narcotics. 5 million. We have more kids on prescription narcotics in America than all the other countries in the world put together. And that's because doctors get a kickback for doing it. It's a very simple nutritional way to alleviate these problems in kids, but doctors don't want to hear from it because they don't make money doing that. They want to get them on the prescriptions. That's how they make their money. Okay. With that said, there's 3 more slides here. We'll open up for questions. Number 1, we need raw materials to develop properly and maintain ourselves and repair ourselves. That's not too hard a concept. We need raw materials. And of these raw materials, we have 90 essential nutrients. They're called essential nutrients for 2 reasons. Number 1, our body cannot manufacture them. We must consume them every day, either as food or as supplements. Number 2, if any of them are missing for any length of time, days, weeks, months, years, depending on the nutrient, you get on the average 10 deficiency diseases. 10 deficiency diseases times 90 essential nutrients. You get on the average, again, these 90 essential nutrients, 10 deficiency diseases, that's 900 diseases that are preventable with proper supplementation, 900. Now, 800 of those 900 deficiency diseases, even if you've had them for 5 years, 10 years, 40 years, doesn't matter, just like Russ Trewiler with his high blood pressure problems, he had them for 38 years. If you supplement properly, you have every honest expectation that they're going to get recognizably better, significantly better, totally go away. So you have every reason to try these things because you're going to get some benefit. And then 100 of these 900 deficiency diseases are what we call congenital birth defects. These are birth defects that are caused by deficiencies in the mother prior to conception in the first 90 days. These are birth defects that include things like cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, spina bifida, cleft palate, cleft lip, heart defects of all kinds, extra and missing toes and fingers, club hands, club feet, internal defects of all kinds, hernias, and so forth, biochemical defects like gout and PKU. These are all 100% preventable. They're all 100% preventable with simple supplementation. You cannot fix them with supplements after the baby's born, but they're preventable. Well, again, we need 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 essential amino acids, 3 essential fatty acids. And we've been spoiled over the years that we've been on this earth, ladies and gentlemen, because our food plants, the grains, vegetables, fruits, and nuts that we eat, take up carbon dioxide out of the air, use the carbon atom, the sun's energy in a process known as photosynthesis to manufacture long carbon chains. And many of these long carbon chains are configured into wood and cellulose and starch and sugar and vitamins, amino acids, and fatty acids. And this is where doctors got their criminal belief you can get everything you need by eating your basic 4 food groups. because they learned 70 years ago that grains, vegetables, fruits, and nuts can in fact manufacture vitamin A and the B vitamins and C and E and K, and they can manufacture amino acids and fatty acids. Everybody agree to that. And so they said, well, all you got to do is eat your basic 4 food groups and everything will be fine. Well, let's look at the scorecard. Americans have been eating better than anybody else in the world for 220 years. We've had more food per person than anybody else in the world. We've had the highest quality food anywhere in the world. Nobody can argue with that. And yet, we only rank 24th in the world when it comes to longevity. There's 23 other countries whose peoples live longer than we do, and I guarantee you they have less food per person and not the quality of food we do, and yet 23 other countries live longer than we do. We only live to be 75.5 in the white community and on the average about 68 in the black community. And we have the most expensive and the most technologically advanced healthcare system in the world, so that doesn't help us. But, you know, they don't do very good there. And so what on earth could be missing if you have the most expensive and the most technologically advanced healthcare system in the world? You have the most food and the best food. What can be missing? What's missing, ladies and gentlemen, are the minerals. 2/3 of the 90 essential nutrients are minerals. Not a sheer weight in numbers are important. Secondly, there's not a single function that can take place in your body, either biochemical or mechanical or structural, without one or more mineral cofactors. You cannot utilize energy or oxygen, DNA, RNA, or chromosomes. You cannot utilize vitamins. You cannot utilize enzymes. You cannot utilize carbohydrates, proteins, or fats. You cannot utilize a single hormone without one or more mineral cofactors. You cannot utilize testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, adrenal hormones, insulin. We already talked about the duct pack for diabetes. You cannot utilize hormones from your thyroid gland or pituitary gland without one or more mineral cofactors. And does the doctor ever say, take Dr. Wallach's pig pack and Osteocal when you have a hormone problem? No, they want to write you a prescription for a hormone, because that's how they make their money. Okay, very simple. Well, as important as minerals are for the functioning of the human body and the animal body, there's not a single plant, there's not a single plant, there's not a single grain, vegetable, fruit, or nut that manufactures a mineral like they do vitamins, amino acids, and fatty acids. In fact, if you can find me a plant that will manufacture a mineral, and I don't care if it's lead, if you can find me a plant that will manufacture any mineral, I'll give you $1 million in small bills in any offshore account you want. You'll be rich. Okay, because I've had 12 years of genetics. I had 4 years of genetics in ag school, I had 4 years of genetics in veterinary school, 4 years of genetics in medical school, and I can genetically engineer any plant that you can find me that will manufacture a mineral to only manufacture gold and silver and platinum. We'll be rich. But there are no such plants. Plants get their minerals from the soil. And unfortunately, nutritional minerals do not occur in a uniform blanket around the crust of the earth. They occur in veins, just like gold and silver. They occur in veins just like chocolate and chocolate ripple ice cream. And the odds of you and I getting all 60 essential minerals in optimal amounts just by eating right is 0. You could spend $1 million a day on food. You can get all the very best artichoke hearts and the caviar and champagne and eat the best fertile eggs and all that kind of stuff, and you wouldn't get all 90 essential nutrients. It's impossible, because plants cannot manufacture minerals, and nutritional minerals do not occur in a uniform blanket around the crust of the earth. And so the only way that you can guarantee that you're going to get all 60 essential minerals in optimal amounts is to do what? You got to supplement with them. You have to supplement. There is no humanly possible way to get them by eating well. If you pass on that information to the black community, you can get rid of high blood pressure, diabetes, arthritis, and osteoporosis, and lupus in 90 days. If you become messengers of this message, you will get rid of these diseases in the black community in 90 days. The doctor's not going to do it. The government's not going to do it. You and I have to do it, because nobody else is going to do it. And I get excited about the possibilities every time I think about it. Well, there's 3 types of minerals you have to know about to make this system work. There's metallic or elemental minerals. These go back to the beginning of time. Elemental and metallic minerals are things like seabed minerals and clays, azomite, Mount Marulanite, dolomite, bentonite. Anything with ite or ite on the end of the word is a clay. You have things like oyster shell, eggshell, limestone, coral, calcium, Celtic salt, trace minerals, salt water from the Great Salt Lake, salt water from the North Atlantic, salt water from the Gulf of Alaska. These are all inorganic minerals. Some of them are liquid, some of them are solid, but you don't have the equipment. Human beings and animals don't have the equipment to efficiently utilize minerals that are extracted from rocks. We're designed to extract minerals from what? Food. We're designed to get minerals from our food. We're not designed to eat rocks. We don't have the teeth and the digestive tract to eat rocks and then extract nutritional minerals from them. So that's a very simple concept that I think everybody can latch onto. And as a result of us not having the equipment to do this, we're very dependent on plants to do that. Well, if there's no minerals in the soil, a plant can't do it. They can only do it if there's minerals in the soil. Plants have been put there to take metallic minerals and turn them into things we can use. Okay, that's how we're designed to get them. As a result, metallic sources of minerals are somewhere around 8 to 12% available to us. And when you hit 50 or so, our digestive physiology changes, and this drops precipitously down to about 3 to 5%. And during the 1960s, the agricultural industry, always trying to upgrade the amount of minerals that are available to animals, added amino acids and proteins and enzymes to the elemental minerals. This increased the absorbability from 3 to 5% to 40%. And if you look at a good multiple vitamin mineral today, you'll see them, they're a mixture of these elemental minerals and chelated minerals. But the way that animals and humans are designed to consume and absorb and utilize and store minerals is from our food. We're not designed to eat rocks. We're supposed to get our minerals from our food, and as a result, we have the equipment. We have the biochemical equipment to absorb, utilize, and store minerals from food. And as a result, these are up to 98% available to us. 2.5 times more available than the chelated, and up to 10 times more available than the elemental minerals. Plant-derived colloidal minerals are liquid in form. They're small particle size, 7 to 10,000 times smaller than a red blood cell. And a red blood cell is 7 microns in diameter. We're talking angstrom unit size particles here. They're the smallest particle you can see with an electron microscope, so it's extremely absorbable, just if nothing else because of particle size. It's negatively charged, and these three factors together give you the up to 98% absorbability. The way it's supposed to be in the grand plan is our food plants, our grains, vegetables, fruits, and nuts are supposed to take elemental minerals out of the soil, convert them to colloidal minerals, and then we eat the plants. Unfortunately, the system is not perfect. Plants cannot manufacture minerals. Nutritional minerals do not occur in a uniform blanket around the crust of the earth. And we've only used a very simplistic fertilizer for the last 100 years, NPK, to give us the maximum yields in terms of tons and bushels per acre. And nobody has given a farmer any kind of tax break or cash incentive to make sure that you and I got all 60 essential minerals. Nobody's been worrying about that. And all they're talking about is tons and bushels, because that's where the dollars are, tons and bushels. Okay, so we're responsible for making sure we get all these minerals. Well, the second thing that makes American longevity products unique, remember, the first thing is our formulas are designed to do something. They're all designed to do something, and not just a list of vitamins and minerals. The second thing that makes our products unique is our trace minerals come from a plant source. This is an ancient plant compost. This is in Emery County, Utah, in south central Utah, about 150 miles southeast of Salt Lake City. And this is very unique. This is the only commercially viable source of this stuff known in the world. There may be other sources, but nobody's found them yet. This is the only commercially viable source of this stuff known in the world. And back in the prehistoric days, this material was plants. This was a forest, trees, brush, and grasses. And they took up the 77 minerals, the metallic minerals that were in the walls and floor of that valley, converted them to a plant-derived colloidal mineral. And then a volcanic eruption entombed that valley and entombed that forest with a very thin layer in geological terms of mud, ash, and lava. That's this cap here, about 20 to 50 foot thick. This is anywhere from 50 to 100 foot thick here. And because this was so thin, it never applied enough pressure to that plant compost to convert it into coal or oil. See, this stuff is kind of pre-coal or oil, but it never happened because of the light covering on it. This never fossilized or petrified because plants, animals, and people have to be submerged in water for thousands of years to fossilize or petrify, so that never happened. This is nothing but ancient plant compost. If you look at this material under the microscope, take a little bit of it and put it on a slide and look at it, it's nothing but fragments of leaves and bark and twigs and flowers and buds and plant cells and fibers, and we grind it up into a meal that looks much like coffee grounds, same chocolate color, same size. We soak it for 4 to 6 weeks in filtered spring water, and the spring water leaches these 77 plant minerals out of this plant compost. We filter it, bottle it. It's called Majestic Earth Plant-Derived Colloidal Minerals, and this is a very important part of all of our programs. The pig pack, the duck pack, the ferret fat pack for weight loss, the filly pack for Balance FX and OsteoCal for women, and the stud horse formula for guys, and the wallaby pack for kids, and on and on and on. And so this is the second reason why our products are unique. With all that said, you can, of course, I think most of you are already using American longevity products. And you know that a simple one-time in your life $6 sign-up fee, you get a 30% discount off of retail. And our retail is very economical compared to anybody else's wholesale, and so 30% off of our retail is very good. Secondly, if you get on what we call auto ship, which helps us with inventory flow in our type of industry, something like 65 to 75% of all the orders come in the last week of the month. Everybody waits till they know their check's coming. It's kind of at the end of the month. So to help us even things out for inventory flow and dispersion of labor and so forth, we give you the incentive of paying the shipping and handling for you if you get on auto ship, so you don't have to pay shipping and handling if you get on auto ship. Okay, so you're now saving 37% instead of just 30%. And you can also get your products for free with American Longevity. All you have to do is introduce them to 10, 12, 14 people, educate them a little bit, loan them one of your audio cassette tapes, your CDs, your videos, your books, help them get on auto ship, and you'll get a rebate check every month which will significantly reduce or totally eliminate your costs. Now, I don't know how to make your products any cheaper than free. How many of you have a pharmacy, a doctor, an insurance company, an HMO who says, bring us 10, 12, 14 new patients every month, our customers, and we'll give you your medical, your HMO, your doctor, your pharmacy, and your insurance for free? Of course, none of them do that, but you can get our products for free just by introducing it to other people and getting them going on it. So we give you that incentive. And we know that maybe 1 or 2% of you statistically might be interested in making an extra $500 a month or $1,000 a month, $5,000 a month part-time out of your home. Plus you get all the tax advantages of owning your own home-based business, which are enormous. You get to deduct as much as 17% of your mortgage, whether you're renting or buying. You get to deduct up to 17% of your home insurance or renter's insurance. You get to deduct your 17% of your utilities. Your trip here today is tax deductible. Save all your receipts. If you have to stay overnight because of the distance, that's deductible. And so on. Your meals on the trip are deductible. All this is legal tax deductions. Okay, so when you're doing a legitimate home-based business, you get all those deductions. Now, in our first 4 years of business, we paid out $31 million in rebates and commissions. $31 million. We'll be at the end of our 5th year next month. This 5th year alone, we're paying out about $15 million in commissions and rebates. And so we want you to get your share. So it's just a matter of getting out there and making sure people know about this. And we're trying to give you the incentive of sharing the message. And my wife and I personally do not take any money from this company. We make our living other ways. And that's why we pay percentage-wise more than any other network marketing company out there. Amway pays about 38%. Herbalife pays about 48%. And if you cross all your T's and dot all your I's and do everything right, after 2 to 5 years, you can get up to 65% of the money that's generated in your group. Okay? And so that, to me, is very exciting. The financial incentives is there, and if your heart's in the right place, you can actually help a lot of people, do a lot of good work, and at the same time be blessed with a nice income that will help your family do whatever it is you want. You can spend your money any way you want, and we'll help you and we'll encourage you. We're available to teach anything you want to learn. With that, I want to open this up for questions. I know there were some questions earlier, and you very kindly held them. Anybody have a question now if I didn't answer them? Okay, yes. If you have a calcium deficiency, I'll repeat it. If you have a calcium deficiency disease, calcium, you'll be disappointed in the results. And if you could flip on that light, I'd be grateful. Thank you. You want to take the whole program. You want to take the pig pack and the osteocal twice a day for the average sized person, and then stay away from the carbonated drinks and caffeine. Just staying away from carbonated drinks and caffeine, and taking the pig pack and the osteocal will give you all the raw materials you need to rebuild your bones, your calcium reserves. Yes, ma'am.
The pig pack, is it a liquid or the tablets, capsules, or what?
It's about 99% liquid. There are a couple of capsules. There's one soft gel capsule in there. That's the essential fatty acids. You cannot mix the essential fatty acids in with the minerals before you consume them, because on the shelf over time they turn into soap. If you ever made soap, you mix animal fat, with wood ashes. That's how we used to do it when I was a kid. We'd mix the wood ashes out of the wood stove with the fat that we'd get when we cook meat and so forth. We make our soap that way. We put a little lye in there. And so you can't do that. And so we do keep the oil, the essential fatty acids out from the minerals. We also have what we call glucogel, which is a capsule, which is the raw material to rebuild cartilage and ligaments and tendons and bone matrix. And so those two capsules, and then all the rest of it is liquid, all the vitamins and amino acids and and the trace minerals and so forth are all liquids. They taste good. They taste like tangerine. The Osteocal, if you just put it in water, it'll taste like pina colada, although there's no sugar in it. But it tastes like pineapple and coconut. If you mix it with like our chocolate shake, our whey shake product, it tastes like chocolate marshmallow. It's very, very good. There's no sugar in them. So kids will consume them.
Another question is, what about people having hip replacement surgery? They can take the pig pack or the Osteocal also if they still having problems?
Oh, if they still had problems, it's very common. 99.9% of the people who get hip surgery is going to have problems because they haven't solved the systemic problem of the osteoporosis. All they've done was saw the end off of one hip. They have not solved the problem when they give you artificial hip replacement. Now, the one thing that will happen when you take the pig pack and the Osteocal when you've had hip surgery or knee surgery is that it's going to make the bone healthy, and the bone's going to grip that device very tight, and it's going to make it pain-free. But if you don't do that, if you don't take the pig pack and the Osteocal, what's going to happen is in the next 6 months to a year, they're going to have to take it out and put a bigger one in. Then they got to take it out 2 years later and put a bigger one in. And they keep going back. They keep milking your insurance policy and putting you at risk. Yes, sir.
What do you recommend for somebody that fractured the vertebrae in their neck and they're waiting for the vertebrae to heal, so hopefully they won't be paralyzed?
Pig pack and Osteocal twice a day, no carbonated drinks, no caffeine. Unless they weigh, if they weigh 250 pounds, I'd have them take it 3 times a day. But if they weigh 200 pounds or less, twice a day. Pig pack and Osteocal twice a day. We have lots of people who fractured their necks and their backs and so forth that get on these products, and they do extremely well. One of our favorite guys is a guy by the name of Terry Porter, 6'5", big basketball player from Utah, and he was going down the mountain on the snow in a big truck inner tube, and he bounced off of it and landed on his head and fractured 2 vertebrae in his neck. He was a partial quadriplegic. He was in a fetal position. He was all curled up like a fetus, for 3 years. They told him he was going to die in a couple of years, had no hope. And just out of his sheer personal will, he started moving 1 finger and so forth, then 2 fingers, and then he got on the program and whatnot. Today, he walks with just his right toe on his right leg, drags a little bit. You have to really watch him to see anything's wrong. And he's a national champion at shooting trap. So his back, shoulders, arm, fingers, and hand and eye coordination is perfect. He's a national trap shooting champion. And so here's a guy that went from, he's told he's going to die, had 2 fractured vertebrae, one of the worst neck fractures where people didn't die instantly that they've ever seen, and yet he can come back. And so you give people the right things, and if they have the internal will, they can come back. Yes, ma'am.
How does artificial sweeteners impact life? They tell us that diabetics use artificial sweeteners.
Well, artificial sweeteners are necessary because people crave sweets, okay, especially when you're diabetic. And the reason why people crave sweets is because you're minerally deficient. If you're taking the minerals, the odds are you won't crave sweets. And I don't like to use artificial sweeteners on a regular basis because it masks a very important clue. And the very important clue is you start craving sweets when you don't have enough minerals. If you're just constantly taking sweet things all the time, you don't know if you're craving it or if it's just your habit. See? And so I'd rather have you not take any sweet things. But if you have to take artificial sweeteners, things like Splenda and Equal and NutraSweet are okay. The Sweet and Low, I don't like that because it contains saccharin, which has been shown to cause cancer in laboratory animals. And people are funny, they smoke, they use saccharin, they eat fried foods, and they wonder why they get cancer. I don't know why I got cancer. I lived right. Yes, ma'am.
My question is concerning okay, you were saying that in Japan and some of the Asian cultures that their life expectancy and all is higher, but they consume thousands of milligrams of sodium on a regular basis. My concern is about the MSG. And the reason I'm saying that is because I notice whenever I consume something with MSG in it, even if I don't know it's in there, almost immediately I get a headache.
Okay. That's absolutely true. MSG, many people are sensitive to it. And so if you know you're sensitive to it, you want to be alert to that. If you go out to Oriental restaurants, they put the MSG in the food last, and so warn them. They're very familiar that many people can't tolerate it. And so you want to warn them. You want to read labels. They're required to put that on the label and things like hamburger helper and soups and things like that.
Almost everything
Yep.
is just a process.
Yep. And so the clue is don't eat things that are processed. Yeah, you got to stay away from it. There's no answer to it. If you're sensitive to MSG, you just got to stay away from it.
Okay, also the steroids, cortisone injections that a lot of people are getting to suppress the alarm on pain.
Good.
A lot of this stuff is leading to, especially athletes, leading to them getting out there and just popping those tendons and ligaments just from what is it? It's the rotting or something? What's happening?
Okay, well remember, when somebody's getting knee problems, what's the basic root cause of the knee problem or the hip problem? Is the fact that they're minerally deficient, and that knee is breaking down. The cartilage is breaking down, the ligaments are breaking down, the tendons are breaking down, the bone matrix is breaking down, the bone itself is breaking down, and just injecting a cortisone shot into that knee or the hip, all they're doing, as you pointed out, cutting the wire of the red warning light. And they say, go out there and play now. Well, I don't feel any pain. They're out there working hard, and exactly, they're done. And so, remember, they're sweating everything out, and if they're not replacing it, they're going to lose it faster than somebody who's not sweating. So, you know, we're not being cruel and saying they shouldn't have some pain relief, and so we do have a cream. It's called CM cream, which is a natural extract of essential fatty acids. It's extremely effective. Usually within 10 minutes, the pain is gone from arthritis and osteoporosis in most joints. If you have something like deep back pain, you might want to use the capsules. It takes about a week for the capsules to kick in. The cream kicks in 10 minutes. It's called CM cream. And then that'll get rid of the pain. And then they want to get on the pig pack and the osteocal, a dose per 100 pounds of body weight for the athletes. If they weigh 300 pounds, big linemen for a football team, they're going to want to take the pig pack and the osteocal 3 times a day. Then they also need the sports tech to replace the stuff they're sweating out. And so, I mean, these guys are professionals. They're professional sweaters is what they are. They're putting more pressure on their joints and their body than anybody else. And so they need to be totally aware of what they're doing. Because if they're not, they will ruin their lives. I mean, how many of you have heard of Bo Jackson? Great two sport athlete, football and baseball. And he broke his hip, and he got talked into doing hip replacement surgery, and he started baseball again. And he was kind of unbalanced, so they said, well, we'll just take your good hip and we'll put an artificial one in there, then you'll have 2 artificial ones, you'll be balanced, you'll be bionic man. They talked him into being bionic man, and once he got his second hip replacement, Bo who? Bo who? Where's Bo Jackson? He never came back. See, but all those doctors are out there bragging, I'm the one that did Bo Jackson's hips. All the athletes are running to him to get that surgery. Well, did he do Bo Jackson any favor? No. Didn't do Bo Jackson any favor. Got just a couple of more moments. Yes, sir?
Colon preventative for colon cancer.
Interestingly enough, one of the single best colon cancer preventatives, doing something proactively, is calcium. More and more research comes out that shows that getting rid of colon polyps and reducing the risk of colon polyps and colon cancer is calcium. So again, the pig pack and the osteocal twice a day, the osteocal. Stay away from fried foods. Don't eat burnt animal fat. Just eating a burnt animal fat each day the size of a grape, whether it's from burnt chicken skin, burnt red meat, burnt fish, anything, nothing burned. If you eat burnt ribs, and of course that's the tastiest part, right, is the burnt fat. Everybody goes for that first because it tastes good, but that alone will increase your risk of breast, prostate, and colon cancer by 462%. 462%. And then you throw in the processed meats like bologna, salami, pastrami, pepperoni, jerky. Those things, 5 servings a week, increase your risk of diabetes by 42%. And so to eat those things is very foolish. Just coming here today just for that information alone was worth it. Now, anybody else who has not asked a question, because I've only got about 1 minute left. Yes, sir?
Dr. Wallach, the type 1 diabetes, they don't produce insulin, so they have to take the injections and whatnot. I know the duct pack can aid in that, but will they have to take insulin for the rest of their lives?
Yes, type 1 diabetics will have to take insulin for the rest of their life, but the duct pack and controlling their diet, they can oftentimes reduce the amount of insulin they need to control their blood sugar significantly. Instead of having to take 30 units 3 times a day, they may get down to 5 units 3 times a day, which is safer, more economical. And of course, getting the blood sugar down, keeping it under control, stops a lot of the chronic side effects of diabetes. And I have a lot of type 1 diabetics who are in their 50s and 60s now. We've been together for 25 years, and they're going to live to be 100 because they're doing everything right. They're staying on the duct pack, the program, doing everything right, staying on the right diet. They'll live to be 100. following the medical doctor's advice, the average lifespan for a type 1 diabetic is 33 years. Okay? And so, again, these are very simple things. And if you educate yourselves, which is our responsibility, because the doctor's not going to do it, the government's not going to do it, and so we have to do it. And remember, and I'll finish up with, we can eliminate, in black America, we can eliminate high blood pressure, diabetes, arthritis, and osteoporosis. Those things alone, we can eliminate them in 90 days. I mean, they will be gone in 90 days if you just do these simple little nutritional things. And we can reduce the risk of cancer by 462% by doing these simple things we've discussed. And so you and I have a huge responsibility because we know the truth. If you didn't know the truth, you could go on about your business and wouldn't worry about it. Now, I'm worried constantly about it because I know the truth. You know the truth now because I've shared it with you. Again, I want to thank you that we're running out of tape. God bless each and every one of you, and God bless America. Thank you very much. And I'm going to turn this back to Curtis.
All right, before you go, let me just share. I just really appreciate Dr. Wallach coming through. A friend of mine gave me a tape about 2-3 years ago. Dead Doctors Don't Lie. He said, listen to this tape. Well, I took the tape and rode around with it for about 3 weeks in the car before I finally said, well, let me pop it in. I popped it in that time. I've been a fan of Dr. Wallach ever since. Not only a fan, but I have been using these products now for almost 2 years. I was diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic last year. I came from my class reunion after having all that fun and, but fortunately I get regular physical checkups every year, and I checked up this past July and I was diagnosed a type 2 diabetic. Well, alarms went off and I started thinking, why am I going to lose my legs? Am I going to lose my feet? It ran through my family. All kind of things. But after I heard Dr. Wallach and this, what he offered us today, I got on the program, all right? And I've been using it now ever since July. The Duck Pack diabetes formula, I used. I just had my hit this morning before I came here, so I'm good to go. I haven't had any of the symptoms or so forth, but it's done me well. And I get the products. I'm an associate for $6 a year, once, not a year, just one time, $6, and you get the products wholesale. I have a background in pharmacy, so I understand the nature of pharmaceutical strength and things like that. Is it really in there? It's more than 16% that's required by law, and most people, they stop at 16% of what they say that's in there, but what's in here is in there. I'm living proof of it, and you can be too. And as he said, I think we have a responsibility to carry this message to our people because we suffer from these things, and we see now that it's needed to suffer and die from this. My people are destroyed for the what? Lack of knowledge. We got the knowledge we need today. Now we have to put it into action. There are 2 forms back there. Now also some products. One form is an associate's application. Fill this out. This is the one you pay $6 to join. All right? You become an associate. Now you can go, and for people who don't want to be an associate, you can order and sell it to them. But you can pass the same thing on to them, and through the concept of network marketing, which is the lowest startup price for getting into any business, and this is worthwhile, is right here. The other one is a product order form. Now there are a few selected products back there today that you can purchase if you'd like. But if it's not what you want back here, you can get it within a couple of days. We have a regional warehouse that you can call by phone in Boaz, Alabama. I know it. You can get it in 1 or 2 days. You don't have to wait forever to get it. All right? So that's what you have back there. He also has some publications. With my personal experience, I love knowing what I'm talking about. This one, Let's Play Doctor, you will love it. No household should be without this book. Dr. Wallach has gone through and laid out how you can take care of yourself, do all your own exams, all right? That's why he called it Let's Play Doctor. How to take your blood pressure, how to check your blood sugar, what to look for in this symptom, what causes this problem. It's right in here, A to Z. And it's not written for doctors, it's written for us, for the community, so you can understand that. And if you're worried about, God, I wish I could have got all this information, I wish I could, you don't have to worry about remembering it. You can get it in this book called Rare Earths. I have them both. And let me tell you, I would not depart with them for nothing. The things that he told you in here today, plus more, is in it. He couldn't possibly tell you all today, but it's right here, and especially these two books. Another way to get the message out is there are some audio cassettes back there. Live doctors do lie, dead doctors don't lie, good doctor, bad doctor. It's all right there. If you don't have time to sit down and talk to people, a lot of you busy people, just say, here, drop this tape on them. Say, listen to that, like somebody did me. That's why I know about Dr. Wallach. That's why I know the things that I know. And so we have a responsibility. Each one, teach one, and we can wipe this mess out in our lifetime. All right? So that's it.